Hi everybody, I am a multi-genre independent author. One pen name, TR Sloth, is for all things dark, gory, and depressing, and the Margot Primrose is for all things romantic and swoon-worthy. Two pen names, two websites, two Instagrams, one YouTube channel, because here we're going to talk about anything and everything affecting the book community. So, let's get started. Merriam-Webster defines the word trope as a word or expression used in figurative sense, a figure of speech. So why does everyone bend at them? Why do we all of a sudden hate tropes? Well, let's talk about it. When I first started looking into this, I wanted to try to understand every argument, see all sides of it, because honestly, it kind of felt like it came out of nowhere, right? I write books, I publish books, I have to market my own books. I work with the tropes all the time. And so I was really trying to understand where this pivot came from. Why are we all of a sudden so mad at tropes existing? And the more I looked into it, the more, my perception of it changed a couple times, right? So at first I was like, okay, maybe it's not that people are mad at tropes, maybe they just don't understand that they're used for marketing. And I was looking into it. A lot of the people who are mad at them are more reader focused and less in the author marketing world. So it would make sense that readers who are constantly on, sorry, you guys, my microphone, readers who are constantly on Book Talk or Instagram, Bookstagram, they would be inundated with tropes. They would be kind of sick of it at some point. So I can understand how that would happen. So, what caused us to get to this point where everyone is so inundated with tropes that readers are now mad at them? And I was thinking about it and I was looking into it more. And new social media platforms give you 7 seconds to make an impression. 7 seconds is generous for some of these applications. And it's not always 7 seconds to get their attention for them to keep watching or keep reading. Sometimes 7 seconds is all you have for getting your point across, for showing people your book. And in that instance, if you only have 7 seconds, what are you going to tell people about your book? What are you going to say? You have no time in 7 seconds to actually dive in and talk about the themes, talk about the nitty gritty of what's going on. So you have to come up with very short sentences that are attention grabbing. And if it's not short sentences, it's really common if you're not on Instagram a lot, when you go on there, you'll see pictures where people will put the book in the center and then they'll have arrows pointing off and they'll talk about like, oh, this character is a fairy, this character is an orc, or this person has a prophecy. Like they do that with the arrows and quick words, right? And a lot of times the tropes will also end up on these infographics. And people do it because also on Instagram, nowadays people don't read the captions anymore. Caption reading in Instagram is kind of going the wayside. So people are just looking at these pictures and it's got to be, again, real quick. Same thing with TikTok. TikTok, I think, is one of the worst offenders. It is starting to get better. TikTok videos are now starting to lean a little bit more to the longer side, but the majority of the TikTok videos are still 7 seconds or less. And even if you make a longer video, if you look at your analytics, most people are dropping off after 4 seconds, sometimes seven, unless they really like what you're saying. So the point, it got me thinking, are people mad at tropes or are they mad at social media? Are they mad at how social media has changed the way we talk about books? Are they mad about the way these quick infographics, these quick videos, this bombardment of information has made it so hard for us to actually have conversations about our books and what we like and what we've written and what we want to read? And that's the other thing. A lot of the arguments that I've seen against tropes are people saying, like, oh, this book has a lot more depth to it. There's so much more to this book than the one bed trope or friends to lovers. There's so much more going on than a fey prince who's misunderstood. It's like, obviously, there's more going on. But people are only talking about that because that's what's going to get them noticed. That's what's going to get those TikTok videos to the millions of views or thousands, depending on your platform. Those are the buzzwords essentially. So I think what's really been happening is people aren't necessarily seeing how this has changed things. They're only seeing the result. And the result is the buzzwords. And then I was going into it a little bit more on author threads, looking at the people who are mad at tropes and the people who don't like using them. And there's some really interesting takes. There are people who are talking about how they don't write tropes in their books. They don't ever write tropes in their books, but sometimes when they're marketing, they'll go back through and try to see what tropes they did include. And it's like, obviously, there's going to be some tropes in your book, even if you don't put them in there on purpose. They're going to be there. There's a reason tropes are tropes. They're in all books. And then there's somebody else who was talking about how they didn't like reading trope books because they didn't understand authors who were so self aware of their own work. And they said that they didn't want to read a book written by an author who knew they were writing a book. That was a head scratcher for me, to be completely honest, because every author knows that they're writing a book. I haven't met one who wrote a book on accident. At least, I mean, when you're putting it together to edit, you know you wrote a book. So I'm still confused by that one. But then there was another comment that got me thinking. This comment said, I don't mind tropes, but I hate when the book is just the trope. When people only write the trope because it's what's popular. And that got me thinking, well, you're not mad because there are tropes in the book. You're mad because this was a poor quality book that was written to chase trends. So, to that point, what you're mad about is that someone didn't write a well rounded story because they wanted to write a story. What this person did instead is they trend chased. They were chasing the trend and getting something on trends change so fast. So the book post, you have to go through so much work to get your book done and ready to publish that sometimes when you're chasing these quick trends, that means you skip steps. That means you rush to get it out. So, again, you're not mad that people are using tropes in books. You're mad because people are chasing trends and making poor quality books. And those are two very different things. And trend chasing, that was really common for a while. I know way back when all of those YA dystopian books were coming out, there were a lot of people who were accused of chasing that trend. And there were people who were very successful with it, people who were not. And some of them, honestly, it was probably a coincidence. Just because it's what's popular right now doesn't mean you're not allowed to write it. You just have to make sure it's quality. And there's nothing wrong with writing what's popular or writing a book to market, because writing a book to market just means that you're making a book that is marketable. And a lot of times when people hear write a book to market, they think of trend chasing. And trend chasing is very, very different. That's when you latch onto something. You're like, oh, one bad enemies to lovers is what's popular on Instagram. I'm going to go write one just around that. And then it ends up being poor quality. Not always. I want to make that very clear. Not always. There are people who write trendy books that are good quality. There's nothing wrong with that. So I think this is really getting convoluted, and I think there's a lot more going on to this trend conversation than a lot of people see. And if you take a step back and you just listen to what people are saying and who's saying it and why they're saying it, you'll see that it's really a multifaceted issue. And at the root of this multifaceted issue is these quick sensationalized videos and these quick sensationalized posts and this inundation of information. I mean, we are overloaded with information nowadays. It's awful. It's nonstop. It never ends. I mean, when you're on TikTok, they tell you you have to make 3 to 5 videos a day. Are you kidding me? Who's watching all of these? And most of these videos are under a minute. Some of them are under half a minute or 10 seconds or less. Who is watching all of this? It's a lot. So we're being constantly bombarded with information, and a lot of these videos, because you have to make so many TikTok videos to be relevant, they're going to be very similar. They're going to be very repetitive. And it's because depending on when you post them, different people will see them. And that's how the algorithm works on there. So you're seeing a lot of things that are very, very similar. You're seeing the same tropes over and over again because that's what's trending on the algorithm. So it's not necessarily the fact that there are tropes in books, and it's not necessarily that specific trope that you don't like. You're just sick of seeing it everywhere. And somebody else had a really, really good point. This person happened to be a thriller reader, and they were saying, do people not like the trope or do people not like the genre? Because they said for them personally, if they see someone talking about a Fey Prince shadow daddy, they roll their eyes and they're never going to pick up that book. But if someone tells them they have a thriller with an unreliable narrator that is fast paced, they will buy that book instantly. So that's another thing to consider. And a lot of times the what's really, really trending on TikTok is fantasy romance or romance in general. And let's all be honest, romance doesn't get a lot of respect in the book world. A lot of times it's still seen as frivolous girl literature or frivolous porn, for lack of a better word. And I'm going to make another video talking more about that because it's not always true. I digress. Stay focused on tropes. So, for tropes, again, that's another really, really good point. If you're seeing tropes constantly for books you would never read, you're gonna hate them. They're gonna annoy you. So, you need to also, if you're part of this, if this is driving you crazy, seeing tropes everywhere, take a step back from social media maybe. Or go through your social media and try to find people who have similar interests. Focus on what you do like. And also, if you're really, really getting sick of these fast videos, maybe take a break and go on other platforms where longer videos and more in depth content is available. There's a lot of book blogs where they give reviews and they go really, really in depth. And that's great. There's also a lot of people on YouTube who do the same thing with their videos. They talk about the books, they talk about the themes and everything else in there and all of the layers underneath the trope. If you're sick of tropes, try finding that instead. Here's another thing. Some people are like, oh no, you should never write tropes. I get it. You're sick of them. But honestly, this narrative that good books don't have tropes is not true. All right. Tropes are used for marketing. Pretend for a minute you've never heard of Lord of the Rings. You know nothing about this book. What would make you want to pick it up? Hmm? How would you market this book to the ideal reader? Would you sit there and say, well, it has strong thematic cases of Tolkien's World War One experiences and his life after the war? I said World War One. That was incorrect. My apologies. Right? Was it World War One or World War Two that Tolkien was in? Oh, I feel really stupid now. Maybe we'll edit that part out. Anyway, if you have 7 seconds to market this book, you're not going to be able to talk about that. What'll get people's attention? You'll say an unlikely hero, a fish out of water, a great fantasy adventure with found family, insurmountable odds. That'll get people's attention. And that's all in here. And this is honestly most hardcore fantasy bros, the ones I'm talking about. They put this book up on a pedestal. I mean, for good reason. It's good. It's really good. Tolkien's amazing. So if this phenomenal pedestal book has tropes, why is it a bad thing these books have tropes? See, this book, you might not have ever seen this before. This is a very small author that publishes on a very small press. You can't just show this book on the shelf and have people pick it up. It doesn't have the name behind it that Lord of the Rings has. This has years, decades of fans. This is got a whole movie franchise and video games and cartoons, and you just say Lord of the Rings and people will pick it up. Do you know this book? No. How are you going to convince people to pick it up? How are you going to tell people what this book is about in 7 seconds or less? Or a quick picture? What are you going to tell people? Do you have time to sit here and talk about all of the themes of the foster system, failing children, and people who are desperate for love, and how that can be very, very dangerous, and how when you're in these situations, when you're young and you're vulnerable, it is so easy to take advantage of you, especially when you're at that precarious age of 17 where you're aging out of the system. Do you have time to talk about that? Or are you going to say this is a domestic thriller with an unreliable narrator? Because it is. It also has vampires in it. This vampire is a sadistic son of a bitch. Okay? He's sadistic and he uses his enthralling on our main character. That's why she's an unreliable narrator. So how are you going to explain all of that in less than 7 seconds? You got to do an infograph with the arrows and the words, or you have to list the tropes. Mean vampire, sadistic vampire, probably sadistic vampire to be completely honest. Sadistic vampire, serial killer, domestic thriller, unreliable narrator. Bam, you got this book. Same with this. This is a horror book. Do you know this one? If you do, it's really good. But if you don't, how are you going to market it? This again, it doesn't have the same shelf appeal Lord of the Rings has. Quick blurbs on this one. This is a folk tale. This is a folk tale about a young girl. It's a coming of age story. She's a fish out of water. And there's a specific folk tale that it is similar to, and I'm blanking on the name. It's where they like sacrifice one child for the crop or something like that. It's similar. It's similar, not the same thing, but similar. So you could have that. I mean, this is gory. Cannibals. Ugh. Very gory, very good. But again, if you don't have the time to really dive into this book, how else are you going to explain it to people? How else are you going to convince people to pick it up? Especially if those people are scrolling 7 seconds, less 4 seconds, 3 seconds, 2 seconds. Oh, I hate that video. I'm not even watching 1 second of it. How are you going to convince people to pick it up if you need 20 plus minutes to dive through the themes? Most people are not going to sit through that. It's the sad reality of marketing, to be completely honest. You need to make people care, and you have a very, very small window of time to make people care. So, tropes. Love them, hate them, they're not going anywhere. Now, maybe trends in social media will change. Well, not maybe, they will change. Social media is fickle. Okay? It's fickle, things change, trends come and they go. And, sometimes that's a good thing, sometimes it's not. We all saw the surge of vampires, and now it's going down, and now werewolves are coming in. Fun. I'm all here for it. But the trends on social media with quick videos and not having enough time to actually go through things, that's what we're seeing. That is the result of seeing all of these tropes everywhere. And again, these algorithms are pushing what's popular. So you're going to see the same thing over and over again. And if what's popular is not your favorite genre, you're really going to get annoyed, which is unfortunate because no one should be getting annoyed like that. No one should turn on book communities. No one should be turning on the authors for marketing their books using tropes because we kind of don't have another choice. Now, I just, I guess all I have to say is go with the tide. Try to wait it out. If it's really driving you crazy, try to find another social media platform or try to find people on your social media platform that like the same things as you. Then you won't be seeing these tropes that you hate, you know? Hope it gets better. Thank you for watching my video. I hope you enjoyed it. And please be sure to subscribe and hit the bell buttons if you want to hear more, if you want to know as soon as I post, that bell button will notify you. And now I just want to take a minute to give appreciation to these books that I used in my video. This is Binding Blood by Beronika Keres. I'll put a thing in the bottom with her name. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly, so I'm sorry, Beronika. This is really good. It's a young girl in foster care who gets enthralled by a sadistic vampire. It's very good. I know I already kind of talked about it, but this is my calm plug for this book. And the other book that I used for my example is Benny Rose, the Cannibal King. This is by Hailey Piper. Hailey Piper is a really good, she's an up and coming horror author. She's really good. She writes a lot of shorter novellas, legends, folk tales, things like that. Again, I'll put the name in the description if you want to pick these up.